Imagine this moment. You arrive home after an exhausting day. Your body aches, every muscle screams for rest, your eyelids feel heavy as stone. Perhaps you're ill, overwhelmed, or simply at that breaking point where the physical and emotional worlds collide. All you want is to lie down, close your eyes, and forget the world exists. And then, in the silence of that night, a whispered thought emerges, and I should pray. But immediately doubt creeps in. Can I pray like this, lying down? Am I disrespecting God? Will my prayer even count? This sincere question has troubled countless faithful souls. After all, we've been taught since childhood that kneeling to pray shows reverence, surrender, respect. But what happens when our body can no longer support us? When pain confines us to bed? What does God truly expect from us in these moments? Saint Padre Pio, a man of constant prayer and profound union with the Lord, taught us something remarkable that many spiritual leaders hesitate to share. A truth so liberating, yet so simple, that it has transformed the prayer life of thousands who struggle with physical limitations, exhaustion, or illness. Today, I'm going to reveal what Padre Pio taught about praying while lying down, a perspective that may completely transform your relationship with prayer and eliminate unnecessary guilt that stands between you and God. Before I share this revelation, I want you to know that if you've ever felt inadequate because you couldn't kneel or stand during prayer, you're not alone. The message I'm about to share comes directly from the heart of one of the Church's most revered saints, a man who bore the wounds of Christ and spent countless hours in communion with God. What Padre Pio discovered about prayer transcends physical postures and external gestures. It gets to the very essence of what God truly desires from us when we turn our hearts toward heaven. If you've ever felt guilty about praying while lying down, write "freedom in prayer" in the comments. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this simple shift in perspective could be the key to a deeper, more authentic prayer life. For centuries, religious traditions have emphasized proper postures for prayer. We've been taught that kneeling represents humility, standing signifies respect, and bowing demonstrates reverence. Sacred art throughout history depicts saints and the faithful in these traditional prayer positions. Rarely do we see images of someone praying from their bed. This creates a profound spiritual dilemma for many people. On one side, there's the weight of tradition and the sincere desire to show proper respect to God. On the other side, there's the reality of our physical limitations, exhaustion, illness, age, disability, or simply the natural need for rest. The conflict becomes even more painful because it's rarely discussed openly. How many of us have fallen asleep while trying to pray properly, only to wake with a sense of shame? How many elderly or ill believers silently question whether their bedside prayers are somehow less valuable? How many exhausted parents, collapsing into bed after caring for their families all day, wonder if God is disappointed when they can only offer prayers while lying down? This silent struggle affects millions, though few speak about it. Some people even abandon prayer altogether when they can no longer physically perform it in traditional ways, creating an unnecessary distance between themselves and God. Padre Pio, with his profound spiritual insight, addressed this conflict directly. As someone who experienced extreme physical suffering himself, bearing the painful stigmata for 50 years, enduring fevers, illnesses, and spiritual attacks, he understood intimately the challenge of maintaining prayer when the body is weak. What makes Padre Pio's perspective so powerful is that it doesn't come from someone who took the easy path. This was a man who would spend up to 15 hours a day in prayer when his health permitted. He knew what dedicated prayer looked like. Yet his counsel on this matter reflects a deep understanding of God's heart that transcends rigid formalism. The tension between what we feel we should do and what we're physically capable of doing creates unnecessary barriers between us and God. This conflict becomes particularly acute during times of illness, during pregnancy, in old age, or in the midst of extreme exhaustion. precisely when we need spiritual connection the most. Before revealing Padre Pio's liberating perspective, let's understand what's truly at stake. Not just a question of bodily position, but our entire understanding of what prayer actually is. As we explore this transformative teaching from Padre Pio, many of you have asked for deeper insights into his spiritual wisdom. That's why we've created something special, our ebook, The Spiritual Secrets of Saint Padre Pio. This resource contains powerful prayers, reflections based on his teachings, and practical advice to strengthen your spiritual life. Just like today's message about prayer, this ebook reveals Padre Pio's compassionate understanding of our human struggles and his guidance for overcoming them. You'll discover his wisdom on dealing with anxiety, finding peace in difficult times, and developing a more intimate relationship with God, all delivered with the same gentle wisdom we're discussing today. If today's message resonates with you, you'll find this resource truly invaluable for your spiritual journey. The link is pinned in the comments below. It's our way of helping you continue the spiritual growth that begins with breaking free from unnecessary religious constraints. Now, let's continue exploring what tradition has taught us about prayer postures. Throughout Christian history, physical postures for prayer have carried deep symbolic meaning. Kneeling, the most commonly emphasized position, represents humility before God, a physical manifestation of the soul's submission. Standing with arms outstretched symbolizes resurrection and readiness to receive. Bowing or prostration expresses profound reverence and unworthiness before divine majesty. These traditional postures aren't arbitrary. They reflect the beautiful truth that we are embodied souls, that our physical actions and spiritual intentions are meant to work in harmony. In Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and many other faith traditions, bodily positions have always been considered important expressions of our interior disposition. The Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches that prayer engages the whole person, mind, heart, and body. When we physically kneel or bow, we're reinforcing our internal attitude of reverence. As St. Thomas Aquinas wrote, "Since we are composed of a twofold nature, intellectual and sensible, we offer God a twofold adoration, spiritual, which consists in the interior devotion of the mind, and bodily, which manifests itself in the outward humbling of the body." We see this embodied approach to prayer throughout Scripture and tradition. King Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord with his hands spread toward heaven. Jesus himself knelt in the Garden of Gethsemane. St. Paul writes of bowing my knees before the Father. Traditional spiritual writers have long emphasized that these physical positions help focus our wandering minds and express outwardly what we feel inwardly. They serve as a witness to others and help form proper reverence within ourselves. When we're healthy and able, assuming these reverent postures can indeed enhance our prayer experience. The Church has always taught that external reverence matters. In fact, many saints would pray for hours on their knees, showing remarkable physical discipline in their devotion. Padre Pio himself was known to spend long hours kneeling in prayer, despite his painful stigmata. But here lies the vital question that troubles so many faithful hearts. What happens when we simply cannot assume these traditional postures? What about when illness confines us to bed? What about the elderly whose knees can no longer bear their weight? What about the exhausted parent or worker whose body demands rest? What does the Church, and more importantly, what does God really expect from us in these situations? This is where Padre Pio's profound wisdom offers us liberating insight. Few saints understood the complex relationship between physical suffering and prayer better than Padre Pio. From September 1918 until his death 50 years later, he bore the visible wounds of Christ's crucifixion, painful, bleeding stigmata that never healed. Beyond these visible marks, he endured fevers that reached 125 degrees Celsius, chronic bronchitis, debilitating migraines, and periods of intense spiritual persecution. Yet throughout these extraordinary sufferings, Padre Pio maintained a prayer life so profound that witnesses reported seeing him in ecstasy, enveloped in supernatural light, even physically levitating during prayer. The crucial point is this: Padre Pio's prayer never ceased, even when his physical condition was at its worst. Prayer is the best weapon we possess, he often said. It is the key that opens the heart of God. What makes Padre Pio's insight so valuable is that he experienced both extremes: the ability to kneel for hours in mystical communion with God, and periods where illness confined him to his bed. He understood that physical posture, while meaningful, was secondary to the heart's disposition. There's a particularly moving account of a woman who came to Padre Pio deeply troubled. She had been bedridden for months and felt guilty that she could only pray while lying down. She feared her prayers weren't reaching heaven because she couldn't kneel or stand in reverence. Padre Pio's response transformed her understanding. Do you think God is more concerned with the position of your body or the position of your heart? He explained that while physical reverence matters when possible, God looks primarily at the intention and love behind our prayers. Prayer, so he would say, is not a matter of posture but of soul posture. Another time, when counseling a man confined to bed after an accident, Padre Pio shared something profound. Sometimes, the prayers offered in weakness are the most powerful because they are the most truthful. When we have nothing left but our dependency on God, that's when our prayers become most authentic. Padre Pio viewed prayer not as a formal exercise bound by strict rules, but as an ongoing conversation with someone we love deeply. Prayer is talking to God as a child talks to his father, naturally, honestly, without pretense, he taught. In this understanding, the external forms serve the internal reality, not the other way around. This doesn't mean Padre Pio dismissed the importance of reverent postures. He valued them highly when possible, but his wisdom went deeper, recognizing that different seasons of life call for different expressions of the same devotion. The essence of prayer, he maintained, remains constant, the lifting of heart and mind to God, regardless of bodily position. Here is the liberating truth at the heart of Padre Pio's teaching on prayer. God desires the authentic offering of your heart far more than any particular physical posture. This perspective isn't a modern concession or a watering down of tradition. It's deeply rooted in Scripture and the Church's understanding of prayer. Jesus himself warned against those who love to pray, standing in the synagogues to be seen by others, while emphasizing that the Father sees what is done in secret. Throughout the Bible, we find that God consistently looks past outward appearances to examine the heart. The Catechism defines prayer as the raising of one's mind and heart to God. Notice there's no mention of specific bodily positions in this essential definition. The core of prayer is internal, not external. Padre Pio understood this truth profoundly. From his own experience of extreme physical limitation, he recognized that authentic prayer transcends bodily posture. When we're lying down due to illness, exhaustion, or physical limitations, our prayers don't stop at the ceiling. They reach the very heart of God. Think of it this way. If a child is sick in bed and weakly calls out, "Mom, I love you," would any loving mother respond, "I don't accept your love because you're not standing up properly"? Of course not. The mother's heart would be more touched by this fragile expression of love than by a formal declaration made from a proper, standing position. God, whose parental love infinitely exceeds our own, certainly understands when we turn to him from our beds. In fact, these vulnerable moments often strip away pretense and formality, allowing for a more honest communion. There's something profoundly authentic about prayers offered when we're at our weakest, when all religious performance falls away and we're simply children reaching out to our Father. Padre Pio explained this beautifully to a group of worried hospital patients. When you lie in your bed and turn your thoughts to God with love and gratitude, even without words, you are praying perfectly. The angels are capturing every loving sigh and carrying it to heaven. This doesn't mean that traditional prayer postures are unimportant. When our health and circumstances permit, kneeling, standing, or bowing can indeed enhance our prayer by engaging our physical being. These postures remain valuable expressions of reverence and can help focus our wandering minds. But the revelation that transforms our understanding is this: these postures serve prayer. Prayer doesn't serve postures. The essence of prayer, communion with God, remains accessible to everyone, regardless of physical capability. Consider Mary, the mother of Jesus, throughout her life. Surely as a young woman she knelt in fervent prayer, yet at the foot of the cross, overwhelmed with grief, she might have been barely able to stand. In her old age, tradition holds that she likely prayed from simpler positions. Did her prayers become less valuable as her physical capacity changed? Absolutely not. This perspective frees us from unnecessary guilt and opens prayer to everyone: the elderly, the ill, the exhausted parent, the disabled person, the pregnant woman, the overnight worker. No physical limitation can separate us from the love of God or the power of prayer. Maria, an elderly woman from a small village in Italy, shares a story that beautifully illustrates the freedom found in Padre Pio's teaching. For years, she forced herself to kneel beside her bed to pray her rosary, despite severe arthritis that made each moment excruciating. She would frequently fall asleep from pain and exhaustion before finishing, then wake feeling guilty and spiritually inadequate. After learning about Padre Pio's perspective, she began praying while comfortably lying in bed. For the first time in years, she says, I completed my entire rosary with full attention and deep devotion. I wasn't distracted by pain or fighting to stay upright. I could simply focus on Jesus and Mary. My prayer life has blossomed in ways I never thought possible. This transformation isn't unusual. Many people discover that when freed from physical discomfort and unnecessary guilt, their prayers become more focused, more sincere, and ultimately more fruitful. So how can we practically apply this liberating understanding? Here are some approaches Padre Pio recommended for praying effectively while lying down. First, create a brief mental transition. Even while lying down, you can make a small sign of reverence, perhaps a gentle sign of the cross on your forehead or chest, to signal to your mind and heart that you're entering prayer. Second, be intentional about your focus. Padre Pio suggested fixing your eyes on a religious image if possible, or simply closing your eyes to minimize distractions. The key is directing your attention deliberately toward God. Third, embrace simplicity. When physical energy is limited, complex prayers may feel overwhelming. Padre Pio often recommended short, heartfelt prayers repeated with love. Jesus, I trust in you. Lord, have mercy, or simply, thank you, Lord. These simple phrases, offered sincerely, can constitute profound prayer. Fourth, unite your physical limitations with Christ's suffering. Padre Pio taught that when we accept our bodily weakness and offer it to God, our very limitations become a powerful form of prayer. Sometimes, he said, the greatest prayer is acceptance. Finally, remember that falling asleep while praying isn't failure. Padre Pio comforted many who worried about this, saying, if you fall asleep while speaking lovingly to God, don't be troubled. A child who falls asleep in its parents' arms is still embraced with love. This gentle perspective transforms even our need for rest into a form of surrender to God. The profound spiritual benefit of this approach is that prayer becomes possible anywhere, anytime, in any physical condition, making continuous communion with God truly accessible to all. While this perspective liberates us from unnecessary guilt, it's important to maintain a balanced understanding. Padre Pio's wisdom doesn't invalidate the value of traditional prayer postures when they're physically possible for us. When our health and circumstances permit, there are good reasons to embrace traditional postures of reverence. Kneeling, standing, or bowing still serve important purposes in our spiritual lives. These physical expressions help align our bodies with our intentions, witness to others about the importance of reverence, and can deepen our own sense of God's presence. The key distinction is between can't and won't. Padre Pio was clear that choosing comfort over reverence when we're perfectly capable of more traditional prayer postures might indicate a casual attitude toward God. He encouraged his spiritual children to offer their best to God whenever possible, which sometimes means embracing the mild discomfort of kneeling or standing. How do we navigate this balance wisely? Padre Pio suggested honest self-examination. Ask yourself not what is most comfortable, but what is most loving in this moment. Sometimes, the most loving response is honoring our genuine physical limitations. Other times, it's offering a more formal posture of reverence despite minor discomfort. For those who continue to struggle with persistent feelings of guilt, even when physically unable to assume traditional prayer positions, Padre Pio offered this counsel. Remember that God created both your soul and your body. He understands your limitations better than you do. This perspective helps shift our focus from anxious self-judgment to peaceful trust in God's understanding. Many saints throughout history demonstrated this balanced approach. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, when weakened by tuberculosis, prayed from her sickbed with the same fervor she had previously shown in chapel. Saint John Paul II, in his final years, continued his deep prayer life despite being unable to kneel or stand for long periods. The heart of Padre Pio's teaching is not that posture doesn't matter, but that it shouldn't become an obstacle. When healthier, we might embrace more physically expressive prayer. During illness, pregnancy, extreme fatigue, or disability, we adapt while maintaining the same internal devotion. This balanced perspective strengthens our prayer life across changing circumstances. Whether kneeling in a cathedral or whispering prayers from a hospital bed, the essential connection remains intact, a heart turned toward God in love. This understanding doesn't diminish reverence. It ensures that reverence remains possible for everyone, regardless of physical condition. As we draw our time together to a close, let's contemplate the profound freedom Padre Pio's wisdom offers us. No longer must we feel separated from God when our bodies falter. No longer must we add the burden of spiritual guilt to our physical struggles. The pathway of prayer remains open to us in every circumstance of life. Think about what this truly means. The elderly woman confined to her bed can commune with God as deeply as the monk in his monastery. The exhausted parent collapsing into bed after tending to a sick child can offer heartfelt prayers while lying down. The person struggling with chronic pain or disability faces no barrier to intimate conversation with their Creator. Padre Pio, who understood suffering more intimately than most, recognized that God's compassion extends to every human limitation. God does not measure our prayers by the position of our bodies, he would say, but by the position of our hearts. This understanding doesn't just apply to moments of serious illness or disability. It embraces the natural rhythms of human life, our need for rest, our physical limitations, our changing capabilities across different seasons of life. It acknowledges our embodied reality while honoring the transcendent nature of prayer. One of Padre Pio's most beautiful insights was that sometimes our weakest moments produce our most authentic prayers. When stripped of our strength, our eloquence, even our ability to kneel or stand, we often reach out to God with unprecedented honesty. These prayers, offered in vulnerability, can be particularly precious to God. He would often remind people of St. Paul's words, "When I am weak, then I am strong." Our limitations, when accepted and offered to God, become opportunities for deeper connection rather than obstacles to prayer. As Padre Pio himself approached the end of his life, with his body increasingly frail, he demonstrated what he had taught. His prayer never ceased, though his physical expressions of it adapted. His communion with God remained constant through changing circumstances, a living testament to the truth that authentic prayer transcends bodily limitations. If today's message has touched your heart, if you felt a weight lifted from your shoulders, please write, "Thank you, Padre Pio," in the comments. Your comment helps this liberating message reach others who may be struggling with the same unnecessary guilt. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future messages of spiritual freedom and authentic faith. Share this video with someone you know who might be struggling with illness, exhaustion, or physical limitations that affect their prayer life. May God bless you and keep you. May He shine His face upon you and give you peace. And may you always remember that wherever you are, whatever your physical condition, the loving ear of God is inclined toward you, waiting for the whispers of your heart.